So I've got something a little different for you midsection here. We're going to have a fairly major challenge. It's major in terms of how long it'll take you rather than how difficult it is. And that is to get the turret rotating. So if you want to dive in without any help, then I'll give you the challenge now. And then for those of you who want a little bit of extra guidance, I'll give that before showing the solution. So you're going to need to revise the last few lectures, I think, if you need to, unless it's all really fresh. At least take a look at your commits. Star, you are committing, aren't you? And we're going to need you to work through the blueprints and the C++ code to make this turret work. And basically see if you can get the turret rotating. But don't worry about how that barrel moves. It doesn't matter if it goes from A to B in a slightly strange way. We'll deal with that as a separate entity, a modification. But see if you can get it working. Now, if you're really confident, then pause the video now. Go ahead, spend a while on it. It's going to be a fantastic way to completely integrate your knowledge over the last few lectures. If you're not so confident, then bear with me just a second while I show you a few pointers. So just a few reminders for those of you who want the help. Remember that we set a barrel reference on the tank, and then that tank sends that reference down to the tank aiming component. Remember that we changed the barrel from a static mesh component, like the turret currently is, into a tank barrel component. So we're going to need to do something very similar, make a tank turret component and reorganize this hierarchy and get all that working, making a blueprint spawnable component. Now all that sounds scary, but actually most of this is in here as a template. So if you start with your tank player controller, remember that that's where everything starts. You will need very quickly then to move down to the tank, where you will be making yourself barrel reference setters like this for the turret. And then we will be moving into a custom class called tankturret.h, and that will be very similar to this, with slightly different wording, of course. And we won't be wanting max and min rotation. We can let the thing just keep going round and round and round. And remember, of course, that all of this is being called from the tank aiming component.cpp file, and we are making a delta rotator.pitch call. You can probably guess what you need to do in order to do the turret rotation. So there are enough hints for you, I think, there. Let's go ahead, go back to the challenge, let you really pause the video, enjoy this larger challenge, take your time. Remember to use source control as your friend. When you get something, little bit of something working, make a micro commit if you need to, just a commit of a small amount of code. And go for it. It'll really increase your confidence in if you can get this done. And if you can't get it done for any reason, don't worry. I know it's a big challenge. Just watch my solution and learn what you can from it. So see you soon. Okay, welcome back. If I had any sleeves, I'd be rolling them up right now to get stuck in, but I don't. I'm in a polo shirt, so no sleeves for me. However, I will say this might well take more than one video to get done because it's a little bit more. Okay, so we've got a magic number sitting right in front of my face. We can delete that. We just don't need it. So I think that in order to get started, we're going to need to start by making this new class, right? Because nearly everything's going to depend on it. I can't wire up the blueprint. I can't get my references. I can't do anything without a new class. So let's go ahead and make a new class. Now, if you're not sure what the class should be, well, we're modeling the barrel, remember? Which was a static mesh component type. So we add a new C++ class. Now, there is no static mesh component in this list, unfortunately, so we have to click Show All Classes. And we go static mesh component, like that. And then let's call it tank. Okay, so let's create this class. Now, it would be prudent once this class is created to open up the tank barrel and use it as a bit of a template for the turret. Now, when you use another class as a template, you need to be a bit careful that you don't end up inheriting behavior that's not relevant, but on the other hand, we've done a load of work in the barrel, and why not use it? So there's my tank barrel.h, and then the turret's to the right of it. By the way, if you want to change the order that these tabs open, say I open tank, you see mine opens on the right. If you don't like yours opening on the left, it's tools and options over here in Visual Studio, and then you look for tab, and then you'll find under environment, tabs and windows, this top setting there. Now, Xcode people don't really have the same concept because Windows work differently in Xcode. All right, so what did we do in the tank barrel to make it available to the blueprint? It was that line there. Remember that over in the tank blueprint, we're going to want to add a custom component, right? And we don't have tank turret, even though we've made the C++ class. And that is simply because we need this line that I've got highlighted, pasted it as our class annotation like that. All right, that alone will make it possible to add it to the blueprint. Let's try it. We need to compile. And then if we go down to the custom component list here, there it is, tank aiming and tank barrel right now. Once the code compiles, tank turret should appear in that list. Now we may have to just repopulate the list because it's not dynamic. There you go, tank turret. Fantastic. So that was that bit. Now once you've got a tank turret, it needs to be childed to the tank appropriately. So just make sure by expanding and collapsing, whatever you need to do to make sure it's at the right level, because that's really important or the sockets won't work. Cool. All right, so while we've still got a turret to model, what is it about it? What have we changed about the turret? Well, not that much. I mean, you can't tell by flicking through quickly, but that's one of the reasons actually I've hidden collision on our version, because you see how much simpler and lighter this is. Collision and physics have gone with the collision. That makes it easier to look at, right? But our turret basically just had a static mesh on it. So let's just go and set the turret mesh like this. Oh, 2 R's, I think. Great. It's got no offset. That's cool. So we've got a tank turret now. We can move our barrel into this new tank turret. And I think I can safely say, let's ditch the old turret. Let's go to the viewport. Makes life a bit easier to see what's going on. There goes the old turret. If you highlight it and delete it, the new one can just be called turret. And then we've got a bit of messing around to do. Why is the turret on the floor? Well, because it hasn't been parented to the tank's turret socket. Boom. Why is the barrel up in the air? Because the barrel has been reparented to this turret and therefore it's lost its parent socket connection. Boom. Why is the barrel still floating in the air? Because it has an arbitrary location. It wants to have a location of 0. So does the turret. Fantastic. There you go. We have a turret. Looks exactly the same, but of course this blueprint is completely different because it's based on a tank turret class rather than a static mesh. Let's go ahead and compile. I'm also going to save all. You'll notice that the little stars up here will disappear when I do that. It's important in case anything crashes not to lose my work. All right, how are we doing in this video? We're about 7 and a bit minutes in. I think we can keep going. So let's go and think about getting these setter references next, I think, while we're still in Blueprint. So in your tank blueprint, in the event graph, we're going to need a set turret reference method. So let's go and make that happen. On the tank barrel CPP file, oh, why am I looking there? Well, I'll leave that open, I need it, but it's actually on the tank CPP file. We had ourselves let's put the tank on the left because kind of the execution flow goes left to right. So there is the set barrel reference. Of course, we're just going to want to make a set turret reference. So it's simply copying that method. We can do a find and replace. There's a quick replace, Control H. Look for barrel and replace with turret. In the selection though, not the whole thing. All right, let's replace all. That looks pretty cool. All right, now we're going to need the tank header file. So I'm going to pop that on the left in this case after having changed my preference. And we're going to have a very similar thing. It's going to need to be blueprint callable so that over in the blueprint here, we can actually, well, call it simply enough. And instead of having a turret barrel reference, we have a turret reference. I've already got that same find and replace. So Control H makes it very easy to just do a quick switch. And that should be it for the tank. Apart from, we need to remember that it delegates this down to the tank aiming component, and that doesn't currently have a set turret reference. So let's mosey on over to the tank aiming component header file and implementation file as it happens. I'm going to organize these into the order of the call stack. And then we have this set barrel reference that can be duplicated into a set turret reference, getting rid of the to do because, well, we're to doing it. Okay, let's Control H it, do a replace. That's cool. So useful having that replacement ready to go like that. And then the same in the implementation. Pretty simple. We copy and paste. And then we do a Control H. Now remember the rule with programming, if you're doing something twice, it's fine. If you start thinking about doing it a third time, well, then maybe we need to be thinking about something more generic here, but this is fine for just a barrel and a turret. We know that this pain of copying and paste is going to end because we only have those two things and everything else in the tank is somewhat different. But be on the lookout for doing things a third time. See if you could do them another way. All right, we've done enough code manipulation there. We've just cut and pasted methods using what we do in the barrel as an inspiration for what we're doing in the turret. So let's just make sure that this compiles now. Then I think we'll set the reference and call it a day for this video, get the rest of it done in another. So my compile failed, pretty inevitable with a load of code like that. I've probably just done a silly boo-boo where I have not changed the class name. So in the tank aiming component line 22, what are we doing? Okay, it's a lack of forward declaration. That's all it is. It doesn't understand what tank turret is. So we come along and say class tank turret. And we should also, while we're here, say, well, does the tank aiming component CPP need a tank turret? Well, of course it does. So that's what I forgot, but that's a good reminder about how these forward declarations work. Okay, I'm going to assume for a moment that's the only error because compilation is fast here. When I say the only error, it clearly isn't the only error. A lot of these say error, error, error. By the way, they may say warning sometimes, which isn't fatal, but they're all errors. But I suspect that they are all a cascade of what was going wrong there. All right, so there's one more thing on line 27, and then we have turret equals turret to set. It doesn't have a local member variable called turret, and that's simply because we didn't make one. So we're just going to copy that line, pop it in, do a find and replace with Control H, look for barrel. In the selection, probably have to reselect and relook for the barrel, and then just do a replace, replace, or replace all. Okay, that should do it. Let's see if it does. Back over to the compilation. You can see how kind of rote this is and simple. As I say, remember the rule of 3. Twice, copying, find, 3 times. Probably worth putting a more robust structure in, but that would be much more complicated than we need here. Okay, fantastic. So that's worked. So I can stay over here, go to the tank blueprint, and I'm going to set the reference for the turret straight after the barrel. So I'm going to go over here, set turret reference, perfect. That method has come up. I'm going to go get the turret, which is of the new type, the tank turret type, pop it in there. And then I think what would be prudent to do now is just compile the blueprint. I'm going to save everything in case we end up with some null pointer error. We shouldn't. There's no pointers to protect yet because we're just setting them. In the C++ code, it's very simple. We're just setting something to a reference, but it is possible that if we don't tie that up. In fact, we should probably protect it, you know. This barrel to set coming in here, how about if that barrel to set doesn't come in? So we could just simply go, if not barrel to set, return. And return what? Well, nothing, because it's a void method. So we should do the same thing with the turret, using our same trick of Control H and replacing. And that just protects the pointer. If you think, oh, well, it could crash because of a null pointer, don't just sit there on that potential problem. Let's deal with it. Okay, let's compile up. That'll be a good sign that all our C++ code works. Then we'll play the game, which will make us sure that all of the blueprints still compile, and that is enough for one video. So let's play the game. That's working. I'm pretty happy. I'm going to save all and make a commit. So I shall see you in the next video.